If you still don't understand why Western authorities have tried to unalive the new leader of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, 18 times, let me put it to you very simply. I'll give you a business example, okay, for all of our business experts out there. Previously, Burkina Faso was being paid $1 billion a year by a foreign company for the golds that they were digging out of the ground in their own country. Seems like a lot of money, right? But the fact is, these foreign parasites were robbing Burkina Faso of their gold and other precious minerals for pennies on the dollar and selling them for exorbitant rates on international markets. Now, in just a few months since these gold mines have started to operate once more under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the leader of Burkina Faso, just 35 years old, guess how much money they made in just a few months? $18 billion. They were getting absolutely robbed by the colonial interests who have completely screwed over Africa for generations. And finally, there's a leader who said, not anymore, we're going to get our fair share. That's exactly what Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are all doing. And that's why Western leaders are so scared about his exceptional leadership, because they understand that this visionary mindset will not just stay contained in Burkina Faso. In fact, if left unchecked, which God willing it will be, this sort of mindset, a pan-African vision for sovereignty in Africa, will spread throughout the whole continent.
Who turned Africa into a dark continent? It is a question which I never have found an answer to. There is no more beautiful a continent than Africa, as anyone who comes here finds. But you had to convert it as an image of a barbaric continent which had to be relieved from its own culture, from its own history, from its own. Who created the term witch doctor? As if the medicine, which was a part of the cultural history or of the history of Africa, was part of witchcraft. We have been taught the language of subservience. We have been taught to hate ourselves. In order to create the other, in order to create a rationale.
Africa after decolonization was more or less the forgotten continent. Western countries did not want to engage it for whatever reason. China went in. China treated every African country as brother and sister, and China really invested hugely in Africa. Now, many other countries are talking about engaging with Africa, including the United States, many European countries, India, for example. The more the better, because Africa should not be a monopoly for any other country, not for China, not for anyone else. Africa is for the...
How would an enemy destroy Africa?
Pay attention.
So now you look at Africa, how do we destroy Africa? By dividing the countries, by dividing the tribes, the people, so that they're going to fight each other. Because when they fight each other, it's easy to be taken advantage of. So perhaps until Africa have a unified language, you can each have your own dialect. Just like China has the Shanghainese dialect, they have a Yunnan dialect, they have Cantonese, they have different dialect, and it's fine. But they had a unified language, and that took sacrifice. I was in Ghana, it was very rampant in terms of on the ground. Like we will see corruption everywhere around us. But in the US, there's corruption, but we don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, they say that the US is probably the most corrupt country in the world.
It's time where the white Jesus must pack his bags and go back home where he came from. It's time for Muhammad and Islam to pack their bags and go back to Saudi Arabia. It's time for the African to start asking those uncomfortable questions, which you are asking me from a religious space. Where were you? Who are you? Wait, no, you're not asking me who I was and who I am. Ask me, what were you colonized to be? Because had the Chinese people colonized us, all of us here would have been Buddhists. Had Muslims colonized us, all of us here would have been Muslims. But because the British colonized us, then you say you're a Christian. The day you bring to me a recipe of how to change a goat to make it a sheep, I'll tell you how an African can become a Christian.
I'm so grateful to have you in my discussion of today. I thank you and welcome you in my channel so that we can discuss some things, one or two. And I'm so grateful that the white people, the Americans, are now coming out to admit what they did to Africa, and they now are ready to accept to leave Africa alone and to support Africa in all that it is trying to do, just to make sure that they improve, they find themselves, they stand by itself, and they're ready to provide for everything that they may be a want. So why at this time? Why now? Why now all of that years? Just because the Africans have tried to prove themselves that they can do it, they can make it, they can survive without the help of any people or any foreigners. And this I will give flower to Captain Ibrahim Traore, because before Captain Traore came to power, then it was very hard to see the white people coming out to speak positively about Africa and maybe appreciating everything that Africans are trying to do, maybe to make themselves survive and make themselves stronger. And because Captain Ibrahim Traore came to power and they tried to prove to the world that all that we have been doing towards Africa, all that we have been taking advantage towards Africa, you've been just doing this because there was no any leader to speak and raise his voice or come and resist anything that was being done here negatively that could not help Africa to grow or to stand by itself. Because all that years, the white people and white supremacists have been there, knowing that we as Africans, we cannot do it without them. We cannot survive. We cannot do anything without them. And that's why you see, even during the coming back of Donald Trump to the office, he started by cutting off the foreign aids in Africa and all countries that was depending in this foreign aids. And he did this intensely, just knowing that we as Africans will go kneel before them, beg them to give us, to return back IMF loans and these foreign aids, because our hospitals was depending in foreign aids. Our schools, for any patient, the hospital to be treated or to be taken care of very well, they were depending on foreign aids. So during this time, there are some leaders who came out clearly and say that we as Africans, we have to appreciate for the cutting of foreign aids, because this was just a tool that was being used. And because that they were just doing this, not because they were there to help Africa, not because they were there for the interests of the Africa, not because they loved Africa so much, but because they were bringing these aids, and behind that, they were taking a lot from Africa in the name of AIDS. When they come and supply a hospital supplements, then in back of that, they will come and take uranium, gold, copper, and everything in Africa in large numbers with zero interest to Africa. So they were doing everything in Africa, knowing that at the end of the day, we will still need them. We will still acquire everything from them. So I'm very grateful today that Africans still have come to understand what we have to do. At this time, Africans have now come to realize that all those years, all that 400 years, they have been convinced, they have been brainwashed, they have been manipulated, and that's why they were just quiet, watching over everything that was being done here in Africa without saying nothing. And the African youths, Captain Ibrahim Traore, since he came to power, he came and tried to prove to the African youths that we can do it, because we have been depending in some politicians, the older politicians who have been there many years, but they have doing nothing to build Africa. They have been doing nothing to make Africa develop or achieve what it wants. I always say, and it is said, that when you want to control the world, then you have to control the resources, and the resources is only found in Africa. There is nowhere any other place that you find resources that is in Africa. There is no resource in Europe, Asia, America, and all those countries. No any other countries has the resources. And that's why they're fighting so hard to make sure that they capture Africa. And that's why today they see Africa as a battlefield. So they have to come here and fight themselves to make sure that one of them owns Africa, capture Africa. Because if one of them do it, make sure that he owns Africa, he controls Africa, automatically he will control the world, because the world needs the resources for it to survive, for it to produce anything that they are producing. They need the resources. So I wonder sometimes when I see some Africans coming up to condemn Ibrahim Traore, speak negatively towards him. They don't call him name as a dictator, undemocratic, and all those names, because just because he came to the power undemocratically, with no a democratic way, without a democratic way of voting or political system. And what we Africans don't know is that we have been fighting for this democracy for a very long time. But I always say that democracy is an illusion. There is nothing like democracy which can help Africa. There is nothing like democracy which can do anything to make sure that Africa is stable. Africa has a peaceful stability, has a security stability, and anything that can make Africa stable. But democracy is just there to make sure that it destroy Africa because of democracy, and that's why we have lost many people through this democracy. When in any time African countries held elections, we experience a large number of people who died during that process. There are many people who fight against themselves, against tribalism, against everything because of election. And this election that we are doing, we are practicing in the democracy. So if this is the way they call a democratic way, which is the best way to handle the issues of Africa, why then people have to die because of this democracy? Why then we have to have refugees because of this democracy? Why do we have to live under hatred and just because of democracy? Democracy means a lot. Democracy means a lot. We have to love ourselves just because of democracy. But instead, this democracy is doing things in other way around. And they still insist that Africa have to follow democracy. I'm sure that you know what's really happening today, what's going on in Sahel regions, the fight between ECOWAS and IAS. The countries who have been withdrawn from ECOWAS, countries like of Sahel regions like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and the people who are forcing them to return back to ECOWAS, they have to follow, and they must follow the way of democracy are the fellow Africans, which I don't know what they have been benefited from this country, from this organization like ECOWAS, because ECOWAS have been there for a very long time. But why, if this ECOWAS was there to help in a democratic way, then why are there a crisis, war, and conflicts always in those countries of West Africa? Why there is more poverty in those countries? We have countries like Nigeria, which is the country that producing a large amount of oil, but still this country is among the poorest countries, but still it is drilling oil, the large capacity of oil, selling out the world, but still it is among the poorest country in those regions. Why we have country like Niger is sitting on the top of uranium, but this uranium is not helping any citizen of this country. I will just give you an example of the country like Libya during the reign of Muammar Gaddafi. During the time of Muammar Gaddafi, the country of Libya was feeding the citizens. They was paying the bills of every citizens, like housing, the school fees, and everything that any citizens may want to have as a basic. During after his assassination, that's when the Libyans started to suffer in hands of the puppet leaders that was installed there by the Belgium. So why do we have to base in this organization, so-called democratic organization that was imposed here with for our former colonizers, which are not doing anything to help our African continent? but it's there just to build, to destroy each and every day. So I'm so grateful that at this time, now the white people have come to realize that Africa need to stand itself because it is capable of doing that. We are capable of doing this. And that's why we as we see African youths coming on the streets each and every day. They say that. Donald Trump said that Africans have to go back to their African lands. They have to go back to their home and build up their countries. So we have come to build up our countries. You have come to find out the best leaders who are there to build up our countries. Then still they don't want to see the best leaders they're having. They want to kill them. They want to take them down. They don't want to hear anything coming out of that leader that we are happy. We are submissive to them. We are appreciative to them. So what do they want to Africa? Africa needs to stand by itself. Africa, it is time now we are mature enough to govern ourselves. And what we want is a good leadership, the best leadership, but not democracy. Because if democracy cannot provide the best leadership, then we don't need this democracy. But if it can be there to do all that it needs to be done, all that is needed to be done here in Africa, all that Africans need for it to survive, and everything that we need that will make us prosper and develop, then we will support democracy and we will adhere the rule of democracy. But when it continues like this, then we are not ready to associate or cooperate with this democracy because it has nothing good to offer to Africans. But instead, it's just there to destroy Africa and to make the coming generation to suffer just because of our mess. We are not ready to die and to suffer because of the mess that was created with the people or the founder of who was there before us, and will not accept to make our coming generation to suffer just because of the mess that we are creating today. So all that we need is the best leadership. That is what we are fighting for. That is what we are fighting for. I will take much of your time. I enjoy the video. If then I request you that kindly subscribe the channel, like, share. Speak out your views in the comment section so that we can meet there, we can discuss, because I always respond to any comment that pops in my comment section. That's my duty to do. That's my work. I have to do it because I'm doing this for you. So whenever you come out, speak your views, I feel like you find something from what I'm trying to do. This is not my work. This is our work, because we have to fight this. It concerns us. This is African Matters. Salute to Captain Ibrahim Traore, salute to Julius Malema, salute to Pierre Lumumba, professor from Kenya, for the great job that they are doing, making us Africans to go back the history and know what we want. And that's why today we are coming out of the street to fight. Because Traore said once a time that it's either we fight or we remain slaves forever. And we are not ready to remain slaves forever, but we are ready to free ourselves, and that's why we are coming out to fight. Until next time we come and speak the same concerning African issues, African matters, stay tuned, and maybe we'll be well wherever you're watching from. Thank you.